The Impossible Planet. Chapter 1. The Dead World. Thieville, Sol Exploration Team. May 27, 2148. Sol. For millennia, my people, the Gifrid, used this unassuming G-class star as a navigational beacon, guiding long-range gliders across the surface of our homeworld, Iraq. Back then, knowing the path of Sol through the night sky meant the difference between life and death. However, as our maps grew sharper and our satellites more precise, its ancient role slipped into obscurity, relegated to the realm of niche survivalists and stargazing romantics. Just another yellow dwarf star in a sea of billions. A few months ago, however, interest in this star system was renewed. Not every G-class star, after all, was host to a potential paradise world. Spectroscope analyses of this planet suggested an atmosphere almost identical to that of our homeworld, and the homeworlds of just about every sapient species we knew of, for that matter. If this truly was the case, then such a planet would make a fine addition to our empire. No self-respecting spacefaring civilization would pass up the chance to obtain a new habitable world, so it was imperative that we got to this one first. Excitement thrummed across the bridge as my crewmates manned their respective stations. Thieville? Clicked my navigational expert, their body lighting up the electrical signals going off beneath their plates. Do you think this world will be as good as it is hoped? I have no way of knowing until I see for myself, I replied, my own electrical signals hopeful yet measured. The New Worlds Accord accepted by our Grand Executive dictates that alongside any promised pay, expedition crews are entitled to a small portion of land on any habitable world they discover. I never was the sort to flicker about promises of colonization. Unless this world was truly a paradise, I'd more than likely sell my share of the land. Retiring a few hundred years early sounded like a rather pleasing prospect. Space debris from the Kuiper Belt bounced off of our vessel's hull like the remnants of a volcanic discharge as we passed into the Sol Star's area of influence. In front of me, my various screens lit up with warm light, translating the dull spectrum into a more visible infrared. The first thing that stood out to me about this system was the presence of an utterly massive gas giant further in. Such bodies offered a unique trade-off for the development of life, as they repelled all kinds of impacts from planets further in, including both sterilizing ones as well as those that might induce panspermia and seed a planet with life. This meant that any life on the surface of our suspected habitable world would have likely had to develop on its own. As expected, most of the rocky planets in this system were wholly unsuitable for life. Just past the enlarged gas giant, we found the fourth planet from Sol to be a frigid, rust-red rock with a core long since dead. It was unlikely anything had ever lived there, and if by some cosmic miracle it had, then it was far gone by now. We flagged this world as unimportant and continued on. Our true prize was just a little bit further in. Arriving near the third planet, it was just as our initial readings had predicted. Oceans of lethal hydrohydroxic acid marred its frigid surface like chunks carved from a decaying body. The corrosive hydrogen-oxygen solvent, a silent promise that nothing there could possibly live. Peering down at the planet's thermal image and reading out the chemical composition, a small twinge of melancholy washed over me. Perhaps had it been just a little bit closer to its host star, this planet might have borne life. As it was, however, no complex silicon chains could form at such low temperatures. The building blocks of life were utterly inert upon this world. We did not waste any further time scanning it. There would be plenty of time for miscellaneous study later. Most of the crew completely ignored the dead planet, but amidst their sea of faint subdermal signal displays, I noticed the plates of my signal technician, Jeed, lighting up with confusion. "Thieville, sir?" they called out, twisting their body to face me mandibles first, a sign either of respect or seriousness depending on circumstance. "I'm picking up some odd radio traffic from this planet, signals without an obvious source." "Note it down," I replied flippantly. We had not traveled 20 light-years over the past 2 months to gawk at useless anomalies. The technician was quick to fall silent, but their plates continued to flash confused arcs of light. "It's not important for now, probably just ghost signals echoing off of its magnetic field," I assured them. "No need to fracture your plates over it." Jeed hesitated initially, but soon enough did as I said, filing away the readings as at last our ship arrived at the second planet from Sol. Flashes of awe lit up our vessel's bridge as my crew and I looked upon the world before us. When we had been further out, I did not dare believe the readings for fear of disappointing myself, but now that we were close enough for a full visual, it was undeniable. Beneath its atmosphere thick with life-breathing chemicals, Each thermal contour on this place's surface flowed like an artistic molten lattice. My thermal senses traced the patient rhythm of volcanic activity beneath the crust, a steady pulse that fed the air with promises of a new home. This planet was more than just habitable. It was the sort of unparalleled paradise world that wars had been fought over. Legs clicked against the ground in excitement as those around me rejoiced. "It's perfection," JD clicked excitedly, their front legs tapping against the surface in search of any outgoing signals. No native sapient life either, as far as I can tell. "This one's all ours." Taking in this planet's promising surface, my prior plan to sell my share of it melted away like rock at the banks of a lava flow. Using the land promised to me, I could become a colony lord. My shardlings and the shardlings after them would mature amidst obscene wealth and comfort. My mandibles clicked together in excitement, joining those of my crew in a joy-filled chorus. "Atmospheric analysis complete," chittered Edelman, uploading it to my own screen. "No significant presence of unfamiliar or dangerous compounds. We're clear to land a team now, if we please." Under most circumstances, I was more than happy to observe new planets from a distance as our professional landing crews performed initial surveys. In this case, however, I actually found myself envious of them. To be among the first Gifford to walk upon the surface of such an idyllic world was a great honor, the likes of which did not come around often. Through cameras affixed to the top of their heads, we who remained aboard the ship watched as our landing crew traversed the planet's surface, taking in all that it would offer our people. As they made their way along the vast plains, the other crew and I debated amongst ourselves what to name this world. Many monikers were put forth and struck down, but one in particular kept calling back to us. In ancient Gifford mythology, there was a land said to be curated by the great spirits for their mortal followers, Volca. Said to be a paradise beyond compare, many explorers from before we left our planet spent their entire lives searching for this land, and here it seemed we had found something close. For such a beautiful planet ripe with opportunity for life, it was surprising how simple the creatures we found were. Though some did crawl along the surface of Volca, most life forms here could easily have been mistaken for inert crystals, were it not for the presence of xenobiologists aboard our ship. Less advanced ecosystems were a good thing for colonization efforts. It meant that we were unlikely to encounter primitive sapients, and therefore that the planet belonged solely to the Gifford. "Thivil?" Our nervous signal technician once more called out to me, drawing my attention away from the screen watched by the rest of our crew. "I'm still picking up signals from that dead planet. The computer keeps flagging them as language." Making an effort to suppress the cool flickers of annoyance dancing across my carapace, I regarded Jeed with an even-toned clicking. "Oh, please, that program has flagged the radio waves of stars as language before. Clearly this is another such case." "I've run the program a dozen times," Jeed responded defensively, printing out the readings onto a silica sheet and approaching me to hand them over. "It's come up with the same answer every time. False positives don't have that kind of staying power." Taking the sheet between my upper front pincers and looking it over, the results were indeed rather bizarre, too structured for mere noise, but far more discordant than anything that a natural phenomenon might produce. "And you're sure it's coming from that frozen hell world?" I inquired further. "Certain," replied the technician, sounding almost offended at the notion that they'd make such a simple error. "Fine. We will investigate once the landing crew returns," I assured them placatingly. "It's probably just dying squeals from a crashed survey drone anyways." The remainder of our investigation into Volca continued to supply the crew with wonder. Near-immobile organisms residing near the lava flows produce crystallized pyrite for use as shells. Cultivating such organisms would provide us with a steady food supply. Meanwhile, wide-open plains offered fertile ground for cities to flourish, with at least a dozen locations that could functionally support a planetary capital. In terms of sheer compatibility with Gifford biology, this planet was the highest ranked of any uninhabited world ever found. It would be crucial that we lay claim to it and set up defenses as quickly as possible, lest the Yovi Imperium or Funak Parliament come in and take it from us. All the while, as our explorers surveyed the surface of Volca and collected samples, Jeed continued to investigate the odd signals coming off of Sol 3. Occasionally, they would interrupt my note-taking with more information that meant precisely nothing to me given my limited experience with their field of expertise. Judging by their internal lighting displays, however, the data was far from expected parameters. Spirits were high as the landing crew climbed back aboard our vessel. Volca was everything we had come for and more. Naturally, we'd all be rewarded in handsome terms for our discovery, but beyond that, we had made an important discovery that would improve Gifford civilization. As the crew members non-essential for navigation cracked open a case of Veloxy gel to celebrate, GD continued to voice their concerns regarding the signals of Sol 3. Commanding our navigation officer to set course for the Hellworld's orbit, I left my seat to join the others in celebration whilst of course remaining sober. Sol 3 was every bit as dreadful up close as I'd thought, a frozen rock with oceans of acid. Most of the crew were too absorbed in celebration to take interest in such an inhospitable place. Using my manipulator claws to calibrate a multispectral mapping scan, the results were for the most part exactly as I predicted. The surface temperature is much too low for anything to be alive down there, I called out to JD, switching between different sensors in search of any features that might explain the signals. Atmospheric composition is out of expected ranges, though. Too much methane and not enough carbon dioxide. Even still, that doesn't explain the radio signals. As time wore on, more bizarre details of this dead world began to stick out to me. Never before had I seen a planet with so much free-floating oxygen. Something must have been either outgassing it or preventing oxidation. Reichel, come look at this, Jeed called out to our geologist, who skittered over at a clumsy pace suggesting minor intoxication. We're seeing these localized heat blooms in the most frigid areas, but we're not detecting any evidence of nearby volcanic activity. Do you have any clue what they could be from? Shaking himself back to reality, Reichel huffed out a cloud of waste silica before hunching over the screen and typing commands. Boredom flared into confusion, as each time they entered a new line of code, the computer spat out an unexpected result. That's not possible, they half-slurred, cross-referencing fault lines and volcanic activity. I don't know what that is, but it's not geology. Pull us in closer, I commanded, looking over the catalog of anomalies that couldn't possibly all be coincidence. As our investigation of Sol 3 continued, some of the partying crew broke away from their celebration to survey what was going on. After a few hours, some of them had even returned to their stations to run tests of their own. The more detailed our view of this planet became, however, the less sense it made. What are these? Our assistant astronomer asked, their claw tapping upon an orbital diagram that showed hundreds of small metallic bodies in low orbit. They look like satellites. Pulling up the diagram on my own screen, I could see the logic behind such a guess. The orbits were strangely uniform and had an unlikely composition. A captured asteroid swarm, I concluded, closing the diagram window. Suddenly, a strange pattern of rhythmic sound crackled through the speakers at GD's desk, slicing through the bridge's chatter like an obsidian blade. What is that noise? I demanded from the signal technician, my frustration with this bizarre planet seeping through the bridge. I managed to translate one of the radio signals into sound, Jeed clicked in disbelief, their claws typing new commands at a feverish pace. It doesn't match anything in our databases. The computer says there's a 96.3% chance it's artificial. Perhaps were this a slightly less inhospitable planet, I might have believed the computer's predictive accuracy. As it stood, however, I could see no feasible reality in which complex life could exist on such a planet. This must be some unknown geological phenomenon. Silicon is practically inert at these surface temperatures. There's no chance life could have formed here. Suddenly, our xenobiologist's carapace lit up with apparent recognition. Thivel, they began, their tone hesitant as though in fear of being humiliated. I have a theory. Cough it out, I demanded, my patience having been worn thin by the impossible planet placed before us. Have you ever heard of the carbon life hypothesis?